Hello and welcome to another tier list, part 6 of my music marathon. I mean, it's been just a wild ride and I can't believe that I'm past 500 at this point. And I think that Old School has over 700 songs, so essentially we have like 2 parts left, this being one of them. Yeah, crazy, but obviously, as you know, yada yada, I don't include mixes, all of the rules, blah blah blah. Episode 1 if you haven't. As far as this one goes, I'm reviewing songs from 501 in ID to 600, so we have another 100 to go through. Let's get through it, because this one is gonna be a bit why the fuck is there an image that doesn't have the fucking thing? Okay, give me a fucking minute. Why didn't you fucking load? Okay, we're back, and yeah, there's always some fucking thing, but for some reason it didn't have a text. Whatever, let's just get into it. First off, we have the Trade Parade. So this song is very similar to a RuneScape 3 track that came out in 2007. Oh wait, yeah, like honestly things are gonna be messy for a while, since we are at a period of Old School Runescape's life where a lot of 2007/2008 content is still desired by players, despite the fact that they weren't part of the save that led to the creation of the game. So yeah, this song actually came out with EGE in November of 2007, or in Old School Runescape it came out in 2015. Honestly, it's very chill for a newer track. It does sound very similar to the older Lumbridge and Varrock songs in terms of vibes. This isn't to say the song doesn't sound different, it definitely sounds more modern, as it does have that twist in it, but it fits right in with the rest of the old OG songs. I love this song, I used to hear it all the time. The relaxing yet somewhat animated moments of the song really makes it feel like a simpler time, where people, would just hang around. As with a lot of older tracks surrounding these areas, it has this humble adventuring vibes. The horns at the beginning do sort of make it feel like, it's, you are in sort of like somewhat really important, grandiose place. But again, when done in conjunction with everything else, it makes the song sound more fun than grandiose. It's still one of my favorites, and very nostalgic in a bigger way, more than the OGs. 10 out of 10 S tier. An Easter song, and it's by Ash. I did find it to be a weird style, so yeah, it checks out. Again, just like previous Ash songs, it does have far more going on in it than most other RuneScape songs, as it does have this more, classical approach to it, where you are sort of playing with an orchestra type deal. In a way, Ash is the opposite of Bond, where Bond tends to use instruments and mostly focusing on the progress of the song. Ash brings an entire band with him, where everything is playing together all the time. One is definitely busier, while the other is more methodical in the specific sounds it wants you to hear. Not saying one is better or anything, just pointing out how they differ. This song does have better mixing than previous Ash songs. Everything does seem to be more on the same level sound-wise and not all over the place, although at some points the instruments do sound a bit lower than the rest of the song, but overall an improvement. Being an Easter song, I didn't expect much. However, I was actually pretty surprised with how good the song actually is. It has this devious but playful tone to it. It's the type of thing you would hear in a cartoon during a busy scene with a lot happening. I don't think I did the 2015 Easter event, so I can't recall if it's accurate, but I wouldn't be surprised if it actually is. Either way, it's an incredibly good song, and honestly, for an event song, 9 out of 10 S tier. So, we go from Easter to August with the Cerberus release. As usual, Ash song. At this period he made most of the songs, because Old School RuneScape really did not have that many devs other than him and Ghost in our team, I think. So, again, we have more of a classical approach to it, although this song, you can definitely see the more Old School RuneScape type approach, as it is less intense than most other Ice songs, but still very much with the, classical influence. It's this menacing track, more on the slower side. It does play at the layer itself during the fight, so it's pretty interesting to see how a fight song in this case sounds more menacing than, hype or exciting or triumphant. It's more on the side of hope you survive this rather than triumphantly defeating the big baddie type thing. This song, however, again, does suffer from a bit of a weird mixing, some parts being much louder than others, and just overall some notes being louder than others, as well as the master volume just being a bit all over the place. Maybe it's because I'm used to the RuneScape songs at this point, so it's more noticeable to me, but still nothing that is a deal breaker. Honestly, for being a developer first and not a video game music composer, these tracks are pretty solid. Ash does nail the vibe of them, so honestly, 9 out of 10 S tier. That Sullen Hall. Most times when I see a 6-minute long song, I think, oh no. Thankfully, it's not a Neon song. The good thing about Ash is that his songs do tend to have more variations, and to a point are better at setting the mood, since it's not supposed to just be background noise. I mean, it is, but since his training is not video game music background noise, he doesn't do that all that well, which for us is good. And I think this track proves this pretty well. Track uses nothing more than a bell and organ, I think, and synth, yet it's so good at just setting the atmosphere. It would be pretty easy for this song to just be boring, but instead you just have this, like you have a song that slowly builds itself up, very slowly, but that overall has those little details, those elements that are going to come in full force in the previous song, which is the song that plays at the boss fight, because this song plays in the layer that goes to Cerberus. It sounds super menacing, like you are in the middle of evil and destruction, and yet it's suspenseful. There's a certain discomfort that you feel. Something is afoot, and there's this tension that never really gets resolved and just keeps you going and going, hooking you in. Honestly, 6-minute song, 3 instruments. You know me, I was fully ready to hear it, and instead what I got was an atmospheric intro for the 20-minute long song in that concept prog album. Seriously though, it's amazing at setting the atmosphere, and overall it's a pretty solid track, and honestly to me, it misses a steer just based on the fact that RuneScape isn't exactly the type of game where atmosphere really matters when it comes to these more atmospheric experiences. I mean, it is welcome, just, it doesn't matter as much when compared to the full actual songs that the game has. Still, 8 out of 10, A tier. Next up we have Invader, and I think that by this point you're probably tired of hearing me speak already, because look, I told you this was gonna be long. I wrote a lot for a lot of these tracks, and Invader is another 6-minute long song for yet another boss, from Cerberus now to Abyssal Sire. Yeah, I didn't realize actually how close Serpent Sire actually came out. I really do dig that Ash brings this more menacing, hopeless, fighting in search of hope for survival type vibe to a boss fight rather than just triumphantly defeating the big bad. I honestly think in this case it also fits really well, since these two bosses aren't the types of epic boss who simply fight triumphantly, so I really enjoy the change in vibe. I gotta say, however, again, mixing is a bit all over the place. As far as the song goes, I would say the main melody isn't as catchy as for Serb, but still very solid, and much like Serb, the song is menacing, imposing, and there's this certain search for hope in the fight as opposed to triumph. Honestly, these songs are reminding me a lot of the MIDI version of the songs you get in games like, Shadow of the Colossus. These huge orchestral songs full of just stuff going on, these grandeur which is reflected by how massive the beings you are fighting are. The main melody is on the slower side, as reflection of your character's situation, where you are essentially fighting against the odds, slowly climbing your way through while you have constant chords, I think they are chords anyway, It's hard to tell with this mixing, and for me, because I don't really know a lot about music, but you have this fast-paced, simple repetition of chords on the background to signal this sense of urgency. I also do love the change towards the 4.5 minute mark around that, where the song puts much more emphasis on the faster instruments, since the boss at that point is reaching a more critical point, and it slowly builds all the way to the end where the main melody joins, being faster paced, where you are more comfortable with the fight while also amplifying the hope in the main melody by playing more hopeful notes, if you will. Honestly, it's a banger through and through, and just by a little bit that it misses the 10 out of 10. It's a 9 out of 10 S tier. Next up, we have Dies Irae, I think that's how you pronounce it. This song is from the 2015 Halloween event. It's on the slower side and honestly one of the more vanilla, I would say, sounding Ash tracks. Although again, you probably wouldn't think this is the quintessential RuneScape track in terms of what it sounds like. It's again a more atmospheric approach, the song giving this vibe of sadness and hostility. Hostility in the sense of something being unknowable, where since you don't have much knowledge, you find this discomfort type deal. And well, I mean, this plays in the Grim Reaper's house, so I guess that tracks. Honestly, this reminds me of the type of medieval tracks you see in movies with that murky filter where everyone is just miserable but life sort of moves on. Or a Age of Empires song. It reminds me a lot of those songs for some reason. Seriously, I think this would fit quite well there, especially with the ARP moments of the song where it feels much more medieval in that sense. Contrary to the previous atmospheric track, however, not as good, but still pretty solid and honestly a welcome innovation in the music that Old School Runescape has. 7 out of 10, A tier. Next up, Nox Irae. I see Ash doesn't just make atmospheric songs randomly, this is the other song that played during the event, and honestly, since I don't recall doing it, I'm having trouble understanding where each song plays specifically, but yeah, this song is faster than the previous one, and it's the main meal, I would say. It's spooky fun, is what I would describe it as. Contrary to many tracks before this one, does sound more vanilla, I guess, in that sense that out of every song I would expect this one to just belong in RuneScape. Still a good song, so I can't knock it too much for me, but yeah, I think the prequel was better, honestly. It's still a 7 out of 10, A tier. Next up we have Arcane. At first few seconds made me go, wait, this sounds like the old tracks. And yeah, Bond is back, apparently, and we arrived at there, so oh boy, let's get it. First of all, out with the long ass Ash tracks. I'm gonna miss them, but Bond is also good, so yeah, this is less than 3 minutes, as it should, so maybe Ian should take notes, not foreshadowing anything for future songs that I've already reviewed or anything like that. But yeah, the song is more, I guess, magical with a tone of mystery to it. It's like a certain otherworldly feeling of things that you understand but not quite, since they aren't very familiar to you. Honestly, it's a pretty good song and just what you would expect from Bond. It is, however, at points a bit repetitive, but I mean, it's short, so it doesn't really get to be that repetitive overall. 7 out of 10, A tier. Next up, Country Jig. I've had a lot of controversial takes when it comes to songs and my tier lists, and I know this song gets memed a lot for being bad, but it's a banger, I'm sorry. Like, the upbeat happy style with the banjo, which is something you really don't actually see everywhere. It's actually pretty rare to hear banjo in RuneScape songs. It's honestly pretty fucking good. I think the song is catchy, and yes, I've used it in this Viking Eleanor before, but either way, it might be me on this one, but again, I think the mixing is a bit on the weird side. I think the background instruments pop out a bit too much, but hey, fun times all around. I will say, however, yeah, it's really repetitive, as you know, these types of country songs, I guess, tend to be. So it's really repetitive, like really repetitive. But yeah, it's still a 7 out of 10, A tier. Next up we have Down by the Docks. It's a slow-paced sort of shanty song. It's more focused on the poor district than in the fancy adventures. It has that devious tone to it, as if there's bad things going on by bad people. Not really one of those fun to sing along songs, but serious and on the sadder side, as I mentioned earlier. I do like the bass that comes on every once in a while. It gives the song that more devious, serious tone, and I'm a huge fan of bassy sounds. Honestly, solid, although probably the first track in this list that didn't actually grab me too much, so it's a 6 out of 10 beat here. Dwarven Domain, and the song that I fucking forgot to put text on screen. Yeah, it's a slow-paced, menacing song with huge emphasis on the more bassy sounds, which reflects, I guess, the hostility of the place. And honestly, yeah, I guess I wrote down Dwarven Mountain in the name of the song in my script for some reason. Either way, it does have instruments countering the main vibe of the song and try to give it that more signature sound that the dwarves have with the somewhat playful strings, but it is very much a more serious song. While I enjoy the experiment, I would say I didn't like it too much. I get the wanting to give a more hostile vibe to the dwarves, but honestly, it's just not what I associate the dwarves with, and I think the menacing tone is too much and completely takes over the song to the point where you can't have a more playful vibe, since it's all so seriously and like all hostile, menacing environment type thing. It's a decent 5 out of 10 beat here. Next up we have Corinne the Magnificent. I'm literally just realizing now there's an N missing there. Fuck it, I'm not fixing that. It's magnificent. I don't care. I'm not going back and fixing one fucking letter. Anyway, this song sounds really triumphant and grandiose, like it's an ode to Great Corinne, and honestly it's somewhat fucking generic. Honestly, I enjoy this, like it's pretty much a more like national anthem in terms of vibes. It's very meh as a song, so you know, probably because I'm biased towards anything that sounds like a national anthem anyway being bad, I kinda do feel that the song is meh. Again, it's fine, I guess it's serviceable, just not something I would honestly seek out or put on. Also, the more menacing moments that lead to the triumphant ones, much like the previous song, due to a point end up changing the entire vibe of the song, so even when the vibe changes, it doesn't feel satisfactory. For me, I'm feeling a 4 out of 10 on this one, sit here. Next up we have Wrecked Terrain. It's a somber song, somewhat hopeless and sad. It's a simple track, somewhat repetitive to a point, but since it's an Ash song, at least there's some variation present, which is welcome, but still, I find the song too hostile to being Corinne, present in places that are less traveled, but aren't that far out in the wilderness anyway. Sounds to a point like the iteration of the Thrall of the Serpent, in that it's somber at first and then tries to reclaim a certain positivity and hope throughout the song, but it's still very somber. Somber. It's honestly a fine 7 out of 10 A tier. Next up we got Soulfall, a magical slow ballad that builds up over time. Again, very magical, but somewhat otherworldly. I like Ash's take on magical so far. It's a very pretty magical, if that makes sense. It does have this dreamy but isolated feeling to it, like this magical but lonely and isolated place you find yourself in. It does play at a Soul Altar in Zaya, so that tracks, but yeah, honestly, I'm vibing a lot with Ash's tracks. They are definitely different, and I feel they are not for everyone, but honestly, after hearing 500 songs, like 400 of which were from Ian, I find this welcome change. As far as the song actually goes, it does to a point get a bit repetitive, but it's still a solid 7 out of 10 A tier. The Forlorn Homestead, or Homestead, whatever. I think I've heard these intros somewhere, like, it really sounds familiar for some reason. I actually wonder where I've heard it from. But anyway, it's a 6-minute song with essentially 2 instruments by Ash. Yeah, while Bond have, you know, a different style than Ian, you could still understand they sounded very RuneScapey. Ash, on the other hand, just doesn't as much. And again, I'm not saying the songs don't fit the game or don't fit where they are being played, but just so different in the sense that they would fit many more places than just RuneScape. Honestly, it's yet another example of an atmospheric track that I enjoyed. It's this sort of soft lullaby. It's very relaxing. It grabs you in the arms and just slowly sings to you a melody while, you know, putting you to sleep. It's very like gentle, if anything. It's a solid 8 out of 10 A tier. Next up we have The Militia. The track opens with a bassy song, or sound rather, much like the Dwarven song, the Dwarven domain that I wrote Mountain for some reason, and slowly introduces more instruments and gives them more space to play, transforming the song from this solely menacing vibe to a more sad, hopeless vibe of something that you just have to deal with type deal. And well, I mean, Shazian are keeping out the Lizardman, so I guess that is a pretty accurate assessment. The bassist section does sound a bit loud, but honestly at this point it might just be my earphones. I'm not sure, you know, like I'm not gonna riff on the mixing too much in the sense that it might be a problem with my own gear, and I'm not exactly an expert on it. But yeah, overall, the song's pretty good. I would give it a solid 8 out of 10 A tier. Next up we have Monkey Badness, so we arrived to Monkey Madness 2. It has this slow melody at first with percussion setting the tension by being faster paced on the background. This is the last fight, the glove fight, and you can definitely feel the tension. Then the song goes into this, you know, a bit more of a faster paced part where the tension is still there, but the overall vibe is more on the side of excitement. Especially, you know, of like fighting than necessarily just the tension. And then it gets even more epic, making the stakes even higher, and if the glass is just about to tip over, you know. At this point, the song does sound more vanilla RuneScape songs, where you have the triumphant intention of a fight. It does, again, play during the glove fight, so, you know, you have all of these different sections, which are, you know, the different parts of the fight, pretty much like that Corporeal Beast song that we heard in the last tier list. You can definitely see that Bond came a long way, and at this point he had more experience as a composer, especially in RuneScape 3, and you can really feel it in this track. It's one of the better triumphant plus tension tracks RuneScape has to offer, and weirdly it both reminds me of early RuneScape 3 boss tracks and early OG Old School Runescape boss tracks, like Attack 2 for example. It's a solid 9 out of 10 S tier. So with keeping on Monkey Madness 2, next up we have Monkey Business. It's a playful song with a clear tone of deviousness and malice. It plays during the Kruk fight and the caves after the quest where you killed the gorillas after the glove fight. The way it builds, maintaining both that deviousness and playfulness while upping the stakes and tension, is pretty good, although this sounds like a much more vanilla Bond track, where the instruments are given the space to play and the focus is on the song progressing. It's a good track, solid 7 out of 10 A tier. Next up, Monkey Sadness. It's a 6-minute long song by Ian, and oh my god, not again. Yeah, the song starts with sort of a sad and spooky vibe, very lonely, sad. It then goes into these somewhat like spooky, scary sections. I don't know how to explain it. What I do know is that there's a certain talent in making long songs with loads of instruments that just somehow like bores you. This is the opposite of what Ash was doing. Honestly, I would be as harsh for this song. and I listened to just plenty of bangers before. The only thing that is somewhat salvageable is at 3 minutes 20 until like 4 minutes. I don't find that section bad, but at the same time, unlike Ash, where every detail matters, here it doesn't as much. Again, as I mentioned, very thankful the song is coming after a bunch of bangers, because I think I would rate it worse than what it is right now. 2 out of 10 D tier. Monkey Trouble. It's a 5.5-minute song by Ian. I'm not gonna fucking reiterate what I said previously, especially because this song is more interesting. But again, it's a toned-down song trying to establish an atmosphere. It's a mysterious, somewhat hostile song, like you are intruding where you shouldn't be. I mean, you are literally doing that, but still, point remains. I do think here the toned-down style works much better, although to me it doesn't pass from background noise, which is a shame. It also has the typical combo of percussion, bass, and the other instruments you've heard Ian use in the jungle in all of the other 1092 times. It's a 3 out of 10 C tier. And finally, for the last Monkey Madness 2 song, we have Scape Ape. And I mean, it's just a jungly monkey version of Scape Main. It's pretty much a one-to-one, except it uses the typical jungle instruments Ian loves using. Not the worst thing, and frankly, this is one of those weird covers you would see on YouTube, like, you know, what if this song used these instruments instead? But yeah, outside of that, pretty much the same. It's just not that bad, I guess. It's fine. It's a 5 out of 10 B tier. Next up we have Darkly Altered, as in alter, not as in alteration. This song plays when fighting Scottizo. Honestly, one of the more repetitive and simple songs Ash has done. Also sounds way more RuneScapey, so yeah, maybe there's a connection there somewhere. Anyway, the song is somewhat spooky sad. It does have faster tempo than just your regular spooky song due to the tension of the fight, but I don't think the song fits that well into Scottizo. I expected something darker, perhaps, I guess. Anyway, it's a nice 6 out of 10 B tier. Last Man Standing. Slow, menacing crescendo of a song. Another 6-minute song. They are really pushing it nowadays. I guess since they deleted the forums, they do have the server space for that. It then finally builds to this serious fighting type song. You can hear the stakes, the fog approaching, everything on the line, or some epic sounding thing like that. Speaking of, yeah, this song is like the perfect blend between tense, serious, triumphant, and epic, all while maintaining this fighting vibe to it all. Honestly, it's a pretty solid track overall and reminds me a lot of the older Bone tracks. For a 6-minute track, it does actually go by extremely quickly. However, there's one problem with this song, which is it didn't pass the vibe check for me, so it's an 8 out of 10 A tier. Next up we have The Doors of Din, or Din if you speak a language where this is a ny sound, so you know. It's another sort of medieval atmospheric track by Ash. This one has this sort of desolate but somewhat relaxing vibe, but like, you know, like there's this sort of tension to it. Yeah, Ash songs are a bit weird at times, but yeah, like this is sort of medieval music is all I can think of most of the times. It does eventually start opening up, adding more instruments, and then midway through it drops everything. There's this sort of sad, desolate feeling to what I can only describe as the solo, I guess, and then the song sort of returns to what it was again. It never quite builds up fully and really opens up in the details when it comes to the instruments added, so yeah, it's honestly a just nice 5 out of 10 B tier. Next up we have Ice and Fire. Icy's song with fast percussion. I did like the juxtaposition. It's not a very triumphant type song, even though it plays at Wintertodt. It has these menacing, tense parts, but also these magical parts to it as well. You can hear the struggle of two sides fighting. The icy sounds from Wintertodt and the fast percussion from the mages and players trying to contain the threat. The song also has this slower paced percussion in the middle, where then it gets faster and slower and faster. It's essentially the gist of the song, and I like it. There's also a devious, like, evil tone underneath the song. It's a pretty good song overall. It's a solid 7 out of 10 I tier. Next up, Altar Ego, another track from the 2007 days, or whenever this track came out, maybe 2008, I don't know when the fucking Oriana Altar came out. It has this faster paced percussion since it's in a dangerous place full of enemies and lava, but also these slower moments. The song is more of the side of tense with a mix of combat to it, although you don't tend to fight many enemies here. You can also really see that this song is on the older side since its composition is pretty different and more vanilla than most modern songs released at this time. It's just one of those Ian tracks that it's fine, I guess. It's a 7 out of 10 I tier. Next up we have Ascent. And it's almost 7 minutes, and as the name implies, this plays in the Quidamorton mountain, where you need to ascend to get to the top. Yeah, look, I'm telling you, these names are always amazing. Anyway, this song is by Ash, and as with other songs in this style, it's more toned down, just sort of like background noise, although the song does slowly introduce more elements as it goes. Ash would make killer prog albums, honestly, and yes, again, I do know it does have classical musical training, and that shows so much in these tracks, since they aren't so much video game music as they are compositions that you could play in a classical show. You can clearly see that vibe here, and this song feels like it's building to something. The song itself is more on the lonely side, and then it slowly becomes more triumphant as you are nearing the end, which I guess is when you would get to the top of the mountain. Honestly, I love these more on the nose songs of them being exactly what they are describing. If I told you, hey, I want you to create the musical version of someone slowly climbing a mountain, yeah, this would kinda be it. I love it. I think RuneScape could do with more, tracks like this. There's only so many RuneScape-y tracks I can stomach, honestly. Solid 8 out of 10 tier. Next up we have Fire in the Deep. Some of the elements from the previous song are present here, although not as beautifully, I guess. This is a 6.5-minute song by Ian. I was scared, but honestly, it's a boss track, it plays during Olm, and it's kinda nice. It has this menacing sound without it being in your face, since it's kind of like a danger you set yourself in, like you didn't need to disturb the cute big Olm. It's his Olm, and you sort of just walked in, threatening him for some reason. Outside of the menacing tone, the track is somewhat tense but exciting at the same time, and focuses mostly on the percussion since the boss is more on the faster pace of bosses than some of the old ones. I like the song quite a lot, actually. I think there's something to it. It's not super menacing, not super tense, not super exciting or anything. It's just the right amount, which makes the song very fitting and enjoyable to hear. 9 out of 10 S tier. Next up we have Lower Depths. Honestly, it's almost 8 minutes. They are really starting to stretch songs out, but I mean, at this point I'm not complaining since most songs have at least been good, so this one is essentially the same as Ascend, also done by Ash, but it's more menacing, more isolating, makes you feel far more tense. Unfortunately, it doesn't build up as well as Ascend, but it does build up somewhat. Unfortunately, most of the build-up really only opens past 5 minutes, and honestly, the main melody isn't all that great when repeated into oblivion. Still, the song isn't exactly bad, and I tolerate his repetition more than I do Ian's. It's an overall 5 out of 10 B tier. March of the Shazian. It's a sad, menacing song made by Ash again. It really creates this tension with all the percussion going on and then breaking and then going on again and then breaking. I do like Ash's style of having a single instrument be, constant as the glue to the song. and a representation of another feeling or vibe. It's always more humble, more hopeful. It's like this wisp of hope that exists in the middle of tragedy, and you know, as the song sort of slowly builds up to complement it, you know, like creating this sort of overall interacting of the hopeful standing against the menacing. Like it's like a hopeful wisp that has always seemed to succeed as it always increases the presence in the song. It goes from this hidden thing in the song to the main driving factor of everything. I don't know how to explain it better than that, so I apologize. There's probably like a musical term for it, but yeah, I like it honestly. It's different, you know, it's just a different way of doing songs, and I find it pretty cool. Outside of that, this song is pretty straightforward, nothing we haven't heard from much. It's a solid 7 out of 10 A tier. The Desolate Mage. Again, 6.5-minute song by Ash, again and again. I'm not exactly complaining. This one plays atop of the mountain, so let's see how Ash tops off Ascent. And while this song is mysterious, somewhat spooky and uncomfortable, it also has touches of magical vibes, but it's overall very quiet, very shy. It's on the atmosphere side of songs again, but you know, it slowly builds up, you know, it's like sort of this presence. It slowly morphs from this sort of unknowing and mysterious song with a touch of magical and spooky vibes to it more tense over the course of it. It's like you're in that part of the movie where you're just about to find out the main motivation for the main villain type thing, you know, especially once the song actually does come through and you have like this more epic tense part. It's overall a pretty solid track, 7 out of 10 A tier. Next up we have Upper Depths. I find it interesting how, despite the fact that Chambers of Xeric has had 3 composers for the different levels, topping Bond, which is this song, then Ash with Lower Depths, and Ian with Fire in the Deep, they also all have the same vibes and yet are so different. This one is more on the side of fighting in combat while being tense. It never feels fully triumphant, just having moments of mystery, and just when you get used to the song, it has this breakdown with heaviness to it, which makes you much less comfortable and signals much bigger danger. So just when you know, like win a battle, there's more to come and you don't ever feel fully triumphant. It's a nice experiment. I think that again it has that sort of balance of tension, danger and excitement kind of figured out. It's an 8 out of 10 A tier. Darkness in the Depths. Okay, look, it's your Ash track, you know, slow build up, somewhat tense, somewhat mysterious, somewhat hopeful. I'm not gonna repeat everything, but yeah, essentially same as before. 6 out of 10 B tier. Next up we have Inferno. This track was actually remixed in RuneScape 3. I think that shows how good it actually is. This is probably one of Bond's best tracks and one of the best in the game. Although, tiny nitpick, and again, that might be me, but the mixing does sound a bit weird at points, where some instruments are a bit louder and the constant instrument going on, which I don't know, does sound a bit like lower quality, if you will. Again, that might be me, as my earphones kind of got borked and I'm using old ones, you know, so I'm no longer used to them, but so again, you know, it might just be me. But the song is great. I mean, it's the perfect blend of what, you know, combative type songs with tension and triumph should be. The song continuously walks between these two moods and it's perfect. And the way it slowly evolves, where the triumph parts sound more and more triumphant and then the tense parts sound even more tense. It's the perfect blend where you can feel you can you know, inch ever closer to that sweet victory, but with every step you take, the victory becomes harder as the challenge becomes bigger. Honestly, I couldn't imagine a more perfect track for the Inferno. This is great, and I think this track perfectly shows how used Bond was to RuneScape 3 music composing at this point, as this type of song is exactly what RuneScape 3 was doing at the time, and what Bond was doing at the time. I mean, I really can't sing it enough praises. Again, as far as Old School RuneScape is concerned, after 2013, this might actually be the best song in the game. It's a 10 out of 10 S tier. Moral Wreck. It starts off as this slow-paced, menacing pace type thing, clearly indicating an hostile place, somewhat isolated. It has these, it has such a serious vibe sometimes. Weirdly, it's this sort of power ballad with an electric guitar, or at least the mimicking of one. Unfortunately for Bond, it wasn't the first one to do this, shout out to Attack, but it speaks to how unapproachable the song is, with this sad power ballad singing its isolation, basically. It's definitely a different vibe from most Old School RuneScape songs, and again, something more akin to RuneScape 3, which again surprises me with how well it actually fits in Old School RuneScape, all things considered. Honestly, I think it's a very strong song, and I'm a sucker for songs like this, especially ones that, at this point in the Old School RuneScape's existence, actually do stuff differently than just reiterations of the OGs. 9 out of 10 S tier. Next up we have Fossilized, slow menacing song with the drums very present. Again, very isolating and hostile song. It's like a doomsday march where you are marching towards your doom. It's decent, but the prequel was better. 5 out of 10 B tier. Next up, Lagoon. It's a very relaxing track, which comes as a good palate cleanser, since most stuff we have had until now was very high stakes, very serious, very over the top, menacing all the time. This track just sort of constant synth in the background while ARP just plays its notes, and that's pretty much it. That's the first part of it. It's very relaxing, very content and happy even. It's just sort of there, vibing, existing, at points it even sounds sort of magical in that sense of, beautiful. And I guess that is fair since it does play underwater in Fossil Island, very picturesque place. I always fall in love with songs like this, as I've mentioned multiple times. I like the slower paced, relaxing songs the game has to offer. They're a mood, and this one is no exception. 9 out of 10 S tier. Next up we have Lava Is Mine. It's this jungly style track, and no, I get it, yes, mine is not, as in mine, but it's in a mine, because the mine is full of lava, but it's also yours. I get the fucking pun, alright? Anyway, the fucking song is like this jungly style track. It has excitement, tension, and overall it's just a fun track for a very fun minigame. Said no one ever. I was not expecting this from the minigame, since honestly I didn't think this type of song was fit for the mine, and when you actually play the minigame, you're like, yeah, okay, I get it. I get why the track sounds like this mad jungle where you have to pay attention to everything that's going on, and it's very hectic, because that's how it feels playing the minigame. Between all the lava, the monsters, the rocks falling and everything, yeah, it just feels crazy in there. It feels very chaotic, as if, you are monkeys in a jungle. So yeah, other than that, it's a pretty solid track. 7 out of 10 A tier. Next up we have Preservation. It's a sad song at the beginning and speaks of a desolate place. I guess desolate is a theme for today. I mean, I get it. A lot of places we've talked about today aren't exactly the most friendly, and honestly I have to question at which point that is also what the team behind the game felt. I mean, at this point we are 4 years into Old School RuneScape, 2 of which the game was just in maintenance mode, where Ash just sort of slowly added content and fixed content, and now we have an entire new content added just a year ago, a new raid, and the sequel to the Fight Caves. All of that is just very uncharted waters, and I think you can feel the tension in a lot of these earlier songs in Old School RuneScape, where it feels like the devs just wanted to try their best, despite the fact that a lot of the things really weren't set in stone yet, and that uncertainty is palpable in the songs. Not only in the content itself, but the very music that accompanied it. As for this song specifically, again, tension is the name of the game due to the desolate place. It's a 7 out of 10 A tier. Next up we have Preserved. The previous track and this one are both 2 minutes long. Again, here we have that sort of tension of being in an unknown, desolate place, but here is a bit more hostile as this is further away from camp. It's a pretty good song, and I'm actually gonna read you something that I wrote here that I don't understand what the fuck I was on about. I wrote, and I'm quoting, "I think the song does fit better in the Dragon Slayer 2 part of the quest where this plays, although I keep remembering the puzzle from RuneScape 3. Sorry, unrelated, but the Dragon King there just felt more impactful than in Old School Runescape." What the fuck do you mean, bro? What puzzle in RuneScape? I swear I'm not drunk when I write this, I don't know what the fuck my brain is doing. Anyway, it's the same scenario as the previous song, so it's a 7 out of 10 A tier. Next up we have Tempest. As with many other Ash songs, especially for boss fights, does it have tension? Yeah, and on top of that, it feels like this evil gaining strength that you need to fight against in this sort of twisted waltz type thing. I'm gonna avoid repeating myself a lot, since a lot of the things I've said about Ash's song apply here as well. Again, the tension and everything, I'm just gonna say I love the organ and give it an 8 out of 10 A tier. Next up we have Revenants, and look, there's no easy way of saying this, but this song was made by Modjeth. Yes, that Modjeth. Honestly, it's not bad at all, it's very spooky, mysterious and sad. With that being said, I would attribute this song more to the likes of Bond than I would anyone else. I don't know, it just has that vibe. Maybe Jet stole more than GP. No, I'm joking. I'm not saying he stole this song, I'm merely just pointing to the fact that it sounds way more like Bond than anyone else. Either way, I guess a solid track, although a bit, somewhat repetitive. It's a 7 out of 10 A tier. Next up we have On the Shore, a nice relaxing sea shanty, or well, somber I guess. Oh right, somber, that's the fucking word I've been meaning to use. Oh, kinda sad and evil. Yes, somber is what I meant to use. And I'm not gonna go back through 40 songs just to add that to the songs I wanted. Anyway, essentially this is a song that is just sort of a variation of a sad tale. It's like a sad tale through a sea shanty. I dig that quite a bit. It's yet another Ash song, and again the mixing at points is a bit too loud, but it's fine. Also, midway through the song itself just sort of gets pushed to the background, and there's this bass that takes center stage, as if you are a bit away from the party where you can still hear people, but you're not there. Also, that bass is like something is afoot. It sounds like you're, just coercing with someone else. Just like, as if you're privately sneaking out and, just up to no good without anyone knowing. And then the main song comes up again, especially the harmonica, according to the wiki. I'm gonna trust that. The song grew on me, quite honestly. I found it pretty good, and in the future I might change the score. Or maybe I'm changing it right now? Nah, I'll change it in the future. Anyway, it's a solid 8 out of 10 A tier. Next up we have Land of Snow, and it's a Christmas track. It has this sort of fun waltz to it of sorts. Obviously a lot of icy type instruments since, well, snow. And it's just a fun track. Not too much to say about it other than it's decent. 7 out of 10 A tier. Next up we have Winter Fanfare. I thought this was a typo when I saw the name EIN, but no, this was an actual audio developer at Jagex from 2008 to 2009, so this song didn't actually come out originally for Old School Runescape. And neither did the previous one. I just saw Bond and assumed it did, but nope, it came out originally in 2007. Either way, this track is much like the previous one. It's like fun, happy, festive song, and even whimsical at times. Honestly, I enjoyed it, although it was a different vibe from other tracks. Again, I really just love listening to how different devs use the same sounds to make totally different songs that somehow, they all belong together. Much like Ash, this song has a more classical style to it, albeit not as much. Pretty enjoyable, I gotta say. 8 out of 10 A tier. Ooh, next up, Lucid Dream, and we are starting with the Dragon Slayer 2 saga, as we have the Monkey Madness 2. So Lucid Dream is specifically more somber, slow-paced song. It plays in the Lucid Dream realm, so I guess I should be expecting that one, honestly. Again, there's this sort of tension that Ash knows how to give songs while having this mystery to it all. I'm not gonna repeat myself yet, you know, you fucking get it by now. For this song, 7 out of 10 A tier. Next up, Lucid Nightmare. Well, this is the counterpart. Use the same sounds but with a faster pace and obviously with a bigger tension and sense of urgency. This plays during the fight, so, you know. Weirdly, it's half the length as the previous one for some reason. It also has moments of excitement, but they don't really last long as it's supposed to be a tense song. It's a 7 out of 10 A tier. Next up we have a Mythical. Oh, and we have a new developer that worked at Jagex for a good 3 months and made 3 songs. This one plays at the Myths Guild. It starts off as somewhat relaxing, very toned down and more shy, and then slowly opens up to be this more triumphant song, but never really gets that full triumph. It's like the song wants to have that triumphant more in the background, as if it mattered at the beginning, but doesn't matter as much now that you're here type thing. It's sort of like when you are hyped for something and then, you know, the thing actually happens, and after it happens the hype isn't as important anymore. It's sort of that vibe. But yeah, it's a very relaxing, even dreamy at points, although I expected a more, you know, much more triumphal song, like Fanfare for example. Either way, 7 out of 10 A tier. Next up we have On Thin Ice. This track plays during the Vorkath fight. Honestly, as far as boss track goes, not very exciting one. Like sure, there is some excitement, there is tension and worry, but like they are very toned down. I don't want to hate on the song too much since it's from you know, an experienced person. You know, like this was their second song they made. Because yes, this is from the same dev as the previous song. Although I'll say this, as far as modern RuneScape songs, this one that sounds like the most like Old School RuneScape. And I mean like proper fucking old school. Like if I put this in any other place in the game from the OG times, I don't think people would actually notice it too much. Honestly, it's disappointing how toned down everything is, as I expected, you know, something more bombastic for such a boss fight, but at the same time, you know, I have to change what's there and, you know, not expectations as far as it goes. So the track is a solid 6 out of 10 B tier. Next up we have Oncoming Foe. Again, Ash song that is tense, sense of urgency, plus hopeless, and then you have this more triumphant plus hopeful moment, trying to outshine the more hopeless parts of the song in this sort of crescendo until the song comes to a close. It's good, again, not much to say anymore. 7 out of 10 A tier. Next up we have Relics, and the last track of Sebastian, the developer from On Thin Ice and Mythical. And honestly, again, it's a very toned down song, makes you feel super isolated, like somewhat mysterious place that is isolated from everything, where you are slowly piecing everything together. While not a song that I enjoy much, I think Sebastian is definitely better at these slower songs than, you know, the epic, over-the-top ones. It's a fine song, it's a 6 out of 10 B tier. Next up we have The Dragon Slayer, an 8-minute long song by Ian. Yes, it plays during the Galvek fight, but I think that makes it much worse, since it's not as epic as the quest. The menacing tone is there, that's for sure. As the song goes, the pace starts increasing while the menacing tone stays intact. The you know, song only actually changes after 3 minutes, so it took a while to come up with something new, so it gets a bit repetitive at points. However, the main melody of the song did grow on me quite a bit, so I don't think it's entirely bad. Also, the more menacing tone is the right call here. While a triumphant approach to it would have been epic, the pure menacing tone with a fast tempo which gives the sense of urgency fits the final boss fight much better. After 4 minutes is when the song goes into this transition to something new, still menacing, fast-paced there, just this time a bit more desperate, I would say. And that all comes together at 5 minutes to continue with the song. While it is a long Ian song, I must say it grew on me much more than honestly any other song I've reviewed so far. It took a couple of listens, but I think, the song is actually a banger. It's a 9 out of 10 S tier. Next up we have The Forsaken. Just like this song, I knew something bad was brewing. Okay, look, I might have been wrong about the previous track, but my suspicions for this one were right. It's a 5-minute song that is mostly atmospheric by Ian. The intro is pretty good at setting that unsettling mood, but the rest of the song just sort of has this mystery vibe of an adventurer simply going through a somewhat hostile area, which is pretty accurate to the quest, but it doesn't scream vault that took me ages and a Vorkath kill to get to. It also has some magical elements, I would say, that represent the awe, that players go through, But after the song fully builds, it loses all of that. Like, it all blends together without really focusing on one thing. It wants it to be this magical awe place, but it also wants to be menacing. And while that combo, isn't exactly impossible to pull off, I would say this is not it. It's a fine track. It's a 5 out of 10 B tier. Next up we have The Walking Dead. This song is just really a cover of The Militia, the song that we previously the song that we previously done. I'm just I don't know. Either way, this one has a more menacing, unsettling tone than what The Militia establishes. It's not as good as The Militia, so it's a 4 out of 10 C tier. Song 555 for the 5-year anniversary of RuneScape. Yes, it's an 11-minute long song by Ian, and it is the biggest track in Old School Runescape at the moment. Thankfully this one is long because it's just a mix of newbie melody, autumn voyage, barbarianism, harmony and sea shanty 2, I think. It was released as part of the Falador Party Room Underground exposition for Old School RuneScape updates because it was during the anniversary of Old School RuneScape. I don't know if it's intentional, but at points I think it was mostly Autumn Voyage that sounded a bit wonky as far as I could hear. Again, might just be me, but I guess it's a competent mix, but nothing too insane. It's a 6 out of 10 B tier. And as I've mentioned, 5th year anniversary of Old School RuneScape, Scape 5. It's another rendition of the Scape main theme. This one is again for the 5th anniversary of Old School RuneScape, and I'm confused at which songs are supposed to be part of it. It seems to be this, tense fighting vibe to it, so I would have to guess it's a mix of most updates until that point. But then it also goes into this more relaxing vibe, so I think I'm right in saying that it's sort of a melody mixed with, Escape main. I just don't, I don't know what songs influenced it. I guess it's a 6 out of 10 B tier. Next up we have Roots and Flutes. And this is by the composer from Amatak, and I love that song. This song is actually again from 2007 from another quest that isn't in Old School RuneScape, even though here it plays during the Briofita fight. I really love how funky the song sounds. It has this jungly vibe, but it's not like entirely jungly type thing. The song just has this fun, exciting vibe to it, as despite being used in the Briofita boss fight, it really doesn't make you feel tense or, that there are high stakes. It's just straight up funk, it's just super fun, exciting times ahead. Just imagine Jungly 2 but even better somehow. By this point, songs like these aren't as much of a surprise anymore, but wow, it's a killer song. It's a 10 out of 10 S tier. Next up we have A Taste of Hope. This song is so stereotypically evil, I actually fucking love it. It has the same vibe, like... I actually don't fucking remember any old school RuneScape that's like this stereotypical evilly, or stereotypical evil. I guess this is the new track that you should compare it to when you say that it's stereotypically evil. But yeah, honestly, I really love the evil vibe, especially with, the organ that you hear on other Mauritania/vampire songs. And yeah, this one plays during A Taste of Hope, during the final boss fight. So it has this fast tempo to it while being this, tense battle. The song is very busy, but also clean to a certain degree. Imagine the cleanness from Bond and the business or busyness from Ian. And this would be it. It's like the best of both worlds. It really makes you feel like your time is fleeting and your hope is dwindling. It appears this was the first track by Maud Surma, one of the new composers that, at this point is no longer new, but it's one of the newest compared to all of the others. Honestly, I've heard a lot of stuff from him, especially from RuneScape 3, and if we are talking about, boss fights with high stakes, he fucking nails it every time. This song is no exception. I do think that in that regard, that clearly the sound font is used to is not the simple old school RuneScape sound font, so the song does sound a simple MIDI track, where, later you sort of substitute the MIDI with actual instruments, and, I guess that's the only downside for me, but honestly, it's a very solid track all in all. It's an 8 out of 10 A tier. Next up we have Bait. It has this fast-paced based sound, while a more spooky sound goes on the background. Much like in the vein of the previous one, it has this, tense, hopeless vibe to it. This sense of urgency that things are about to get so much worse. It was first released in RuneScape 2, so it's not original to Old School RuneScape, and you can kinda hear that. In terms of its composition, it's definitely on the older side, but still very competent at that. It's a 7 out of 10 A tier. Next up we have Bloodbath, another track from RuneScape 2. And this one plays at Slepe or Sleep, and the Blood Altar. It starts very slow, very spooky and menacing. I think as far as unnerving spooky tracks go, this one is probably the best. As far as Rune Altar songs go, not one of the most originals, I must admit. Look, I'll give them this, right, at this point it's hard to impress me with such songs, because I've heard so many of them. Back when I first heard the, few altar songs that came around, they honestly, sounded very otherworldly to a point. It was just this completely different experience from everything that came before it. But at this point, we have had several composers, very creative tracks, many coming from Bond himself, which also, made this track. So really this track doesn't actually sound as otherworldly as the first few altar tracks did to me anymore. However, this is to not say that the track is bad. Much the contrary, the track is honestly phenomenal, and while it doesn't deviate much from what I originally set for it, it honestly doesn't need to. As I said, as far as spooky songs go, this one just nails it. In fact, it nails it so hard, it's a 9 out of 10 S tier. Next up we have Conspiracy. It has that menacing vibe, sort of like the previous track, but it's much more on the side of caution. The track makes you feel like something is afoot and you just need to wait for it to happen, since there isn't much you can do about it. In a way, this track is like the calm before the storm, except the storm is coming and is inevitable. It sits in the middle of being just mysterious and spooky. It's that sort of weird vibe. It was at first 2 minutes, and I can see why. It's purely an atmospheric track, It just sort of repeats on loop pretty much, as you know, the changes in the horn aren't exactly enough to keep me interested in the song, but again, it's supposed to be more of a track that sort of sits in the background setting the mood, so we didn't need anything bombastic. It's a fine 6 out of 10 B tier. Next up we have Vanascula. This is that moment where, having gotten the quest cape in RuneScape 3, tells me a bit more about Old School Runescape. Yeah, this track is actually present in RuneScape 3 and plays during a vampire quest. I don't know which one, but the track is like sort of this menacing and hopeless vibe. I like the use of the organ, but it's a bit repetitive for my taste. Again, it was supposed to be just a quest track, and then Jagex later released it as a actual track that you can hear on your playlist, as they did with many tracks from quests in Old School RuneScape as well. For this track, it's a 6 out of 10 B tier. Next up, Welcome to the Theater. And I mean, if it wasn't obvious by now, we reached the, you know, TOB era of the game. I must say, this list is insane for that. We gotten Monkey Madness 2, Dragon Slayer 2, Chambers of Xeric, Inferno, and now TOB. Like, that's a lot of epic stuff to have tracks for, so yeah, as far as this song goes, it opens with its organ, like this sort of grandiose entrance, and then pulls you right down by turning it into this menacing, evil vibe, while having this somewhat hopeless vibe at points. This is very much not a friendly place. This song very much embodies that. Well, I mean, if you wanted something to set a vibe to the theater, you fucking did it. As the song goes, however, and for me personally, it's solid, competent, but nothing that, you know, I would actually seek out on my own while I do other things. It's still a solid 7 out of 10 A tier. Arachnids of Vampirium. This track has sort of this sense of urgency while, you know, feeling very menacing. Again, menacing is the genre of the month when it comes to these past songs. I mean, they all play in Dark Mayor, so I guess of course it is. It doesn't let you get comfortable with the song, especially with the constant changes the song goes through. It does have these you know, bits that give the vibe of being twisted, sort of like these fun moments that don't give you the fun vibe, but more so you're the fun to them. I think it's very solid, 8 out of 10 A tier. Next up we have Dance of the Nilacas. It has the same vibe as the previous track, although this one focuses much more on the menacing tone than the urgency, since this track doesn't play during the boss fight, but rather when you enter the room. It does appear as a boss track though, and as far as boss track goes, man, Surma sure does like seem to be pretty fucking good at them, including in Old School Runescape. I can see the signature style of it in here. While Ian, for example, you know, the song had this sort of three-part structure. With Surma, its song more resembles David Bergot, the composer of the Ratchet & Clank tracks, since his style is more short sections that present different perspectives, if you will. So in a track, it might at first just be a bit more menacing, then go into a more quiet section where the pace increases slowly, and then it brings out the bombastic elements, and then it subverts it again by going into another quieter section that is a bit more, you know, somber, more menacing, and then it builds back up to the original part and then just loops from there. It's an interesting way of doing things, and honestly it's why his songs feel far more diverse than many others, and why they always have this sort of epic element to them where you feel like you are fighting something bigger than you, and the phases that you go through when fighting it. As for this song, 8 out of 10 A tier. It's not over till it starts slow, very sad in a way. If anything, this track and this slow build it has makes everything very somber. In a way, you made it to the final hurdle, you know, this is it, the final phase before you get the release from the theater. This is the song in anticipation to it all. The slow, somber march, Verzik waiting for you on her throne. You are clearly not the main character here, and get dwarfed by everything around you. That's what this song makes you feel like. And the same tone to it, in embracing that this might be where you all fall. It's a pretty solid track, 8 out of 10 A tier. Next up we have The Last King of Yarasa. Again, that sense of urgency with that menacing vibe. This is far more fast-paced than most other songs here, and it really puts you on alert. I don't want to repeat myself, when it comes to this track, because it's kind of the same as others that have come before it when it came to the bosses. They pretty much all have the same vibe, but look, I'm not complaining. The theater is full of great songs, and this is yet another one. 8 out of 10 A tier. Next up, Power of the Shadow Realm. This track is kind of the opposite of the previous track, not in terms of vibe, as it is still very menacing, but it's much more on the slower side in terms of what the song puts emphasis on. It does have your faster instruments, but it's very much on that heavy, menacing vibe. These songs, and something that I haven't mentioned yet, is that all of them are pretty long. They all clock in at 7 to 8 minutes long. So yeah, we are feasting here. As for the track itself, 8 out of 10 A tier. Next up, Predator Zarpas. This track unlocks at the Zarpas room. Again, it is slower in terms of stakes than the Last King of Yarasa, but it's still very much menacing tones all throughout. Although here it's like you are looking forward to having an epic battle to feel triumphant. Like, not totally, but that undertone does exist there, even though it's not at the forefront. Either way, much like the rest of the songs, 8 out of 10 A tier. Next song, The Curtain Closes. Aside the fact that I don't think we need a 7-minute long song for a reward room that players are gonna spend fucking 30-second stops, the song is also weird. Like, you conquer the theater, and are met with this somber, slow march. Like, I understand that maybe you didn't want players to feel this sense of triumph and more a sense of relief, since, the lore behind the theater is that you have to conquer it to obtain freedom. But again, this just feels like you had to bury your fucking friend and life goes on. The moment of relief only starts coming 4 minutes into the song, at which point I'm not really in the vibe anymore of feeling like I conquered anything. And even then, when the sense of relief comes, it's more like this magical you ascending type deal than it is any sense of relief, only to then go back to the intro of the song, to that somber tone. I guess in a way, if you want to be more lore according and point to the fact that no one leaves because a theater was designed to see people get sacrificed, then the song should reflect that as well. Instead of being this sad ballad of, oh cool, we defeated Verzik, but I'm sad because I didn't get my scythe, rather than literally anything else. You could have gone with, this still menacing tone, like the other theater songs, making the player understand that even though they killed Verzik, the theater and the vampires still have control over them. Or maybe a relief type song because you survived, or a cliché triumphant song. I think this is simply not it. It actually reminds me of the type of songs you hear during the credit sequences, which again, why? This is at the end of a quest, if you are doing the raid for the quest, or the end of a raid where you get incredibly rare loot. I don't know, like, I'm kinda lost with this one. I guess if anything, the song is kinda nice, I guess, but honestly, after hearing the songs of the theater so far and having the guess that the rest of them are on the same vein as the previous ones we've already heard, because I've already heard them, the closing moments of beating the theater shouldn't sound like this. Like, again, if you want to be more lore accurate and have this still menacing tone to the song, because you're not supposed to feel triumphant, you're supposed to have this sort of sense of, in a way, you are upholding the false hope that the theater gives but at the same time you did conquer the theater, so there should be some relief. Again, I don't know, like, I feel that this song wants to do that, but it sort of does it in the opposite way, which then as a result, you know, it just sort of ruins things. Anyway, for me, it's a 4 out of 10 C tier. The Dark Beast Sotasek. Contrary to the other Sotasek song, this one feels much more like the calm before the storm, and yes, I've used that one already, but it really is. Since the track plays in the room and not during the fight, while it has this menacing vibe, it also has these moments of awe, you know, where they allow you to breathe for a moment and have, you know, a bit of sense of wonder at what is in the theater to begin with. The theater has been the most consistent piece of content in terms of vibes of the tracks. 8 out of 10 A tier. The Fat Lady Sings. This is something that has been used in other songs before and I didn't mention it, but there's an actual voice singing here, as in other songs. I think it's pretty cool and definitely makes the songs unique. As for the song itself, I really wish it was on the more menacing side, but here it's a bit more on the hopeless side. Still a fine song, but I would say not as strong as the rest of the theater. It was made by Ian, and while most of the other songs were actually made by Surma. So maybe that explains it. Either way, it's a 7 out of 10 A tier. Next up we have The Maiden's Anger. This song is more of a somber tone than menacing. The menacing parts are still there, but much more on the side of somber. It is also made by Ian, so again, unlike Surma's songs, not as bombastic, which to me is kind of a downside due to how many Ian songs I've heard already. And honestly, I do feel that they're, you know, here you don't actually really have that same sort of punch as Surma can deliver with his songs. Like, this track in a way feels more like you are in a barren snow desert than being a theater fighting for your life. I do enjoy the track more if I looked at it from the perspective of the Maiden, I guess. But yeah, the ending also reminds me of another Ian song and I can't put my finger on it right now. Either way, 7 out of 10 A tier. Next up we have The Maiden's Sorrow, a 9-minute long track by Ian. Yeah, so the fight song, right, where you actually do the fight, which is the most long part, is actually 6 minutes. This one is 9. I don't understand these timings. Anyway, the song is very somber, spooky at points. There's this taste of hopelessness to it. Very slow build up. There's almost this like build up to it with a certain mysterious feeling. Sort of like when you are doing a quest and you have to find some powerful artifact because you need to save the people in the region or something like that. Sort of like in that vein. I don't think those moments fit at all in the song. The rest is fine, but again, not as bombastic as Surma and not as interesting. I think that's the problem with Ian songs, is that they are long but just not as interesting, so what is there gets mixed with this boredom you feel as the song goes on, doing at the service to what is there. And then at 4 minutes you just randomly change what the song is for some reason, ruining the vibe that was, you know, originally established, making it feel like these are two completely different songs, instead of just, you know, separating them into two songs. These have that sort of mysterious artifact you need to find much more than at the beginning, you know, but honestly, if nothing else, at least I'm happy to see that, you know, I get it right when it comes to the vibes of these songs. Like, yeah, you know, kind of disappointing, truth be told, you know, while the theater has been amazing in terms of songs, with, you know, solid ones all throughout. Ian's songs for the theater leave a lot to be desired. Yes, they are more old school, quote unquote, but I don't think that is a good thing when you have already heard how honestly great all of the other songs from other composers can be. This song is a 6 out of 10 B tier. Next up we have The Nightmare Continues. Same thing as I've said previously when it comes to theater songs and Ian versus Surma in them. This one is Ian's, and again, while the tension and sense of urgency is there, I don't really get that bombastic feeling. Very, very old school RuneScape, which for this, I don't think it's that great. Still, song's not bad, 7 out of 10 A tier. Next up, and the last Theater of Blood song. Finally, we arrive at the end. It's a somber, menacing track. It is 7 minutes long, it's by Ian. You know, it's slower than the actual fight itself. Same old as previously. 7 out of 10, A tier. And we are out of the theater with Barren Lands. After so many menacing tracks, this is a good change of pace. It's a slow track with a sad and happy tone to it. Somewhat bittersweet, I would say. It's like the song wants to escalate to this more happy vibe, but it's like it gets reminded it can't, so it stays in this sort of lull. I liked it, it's pretty solid. 8 out of 10 A tier. Next up we have Lumbering. Very slow track, menacing, somber and sad. Very much speaks to this hostile land that feels very unapproachable, which it is like the land of, you know, snow where the ice trolls don't like visitors, so, you know, I guess that makes sense. It again slowly builds up and, pardon the pun, warms up over the song, as do most Asha songs. It can get a bit repetitive after a while. It's a nice track, 6 out of 10 B tier. Next up we have Mother Ruckus. It's so funny to hear this because somehow a fight against a rock troll has more sense of urgency and tension than the theater songs from Ian. Obviously here this isn't the theater, so the song doesn't take itself completely all the way when it comes to the tension it provides, and it allows a more triumphant moment shine here and there. And you know, the tension the song has sort of displays more of a vibe of a fun boss fight during a quest, not taking itself too seriously. You know, rather than just an over-the-top rendition of itself. It's a solid 7 out of 10 A tier. Next up we have Snowflake and My Arm. The happy ending, the love story completed between both of them. Yeah, this song is a minute long. Might be one of the shortest actually, I think, that Old School Runescape has to offer. I will again state that some of the audio volume are a bit weird, but the song is nice and short, very short. So, you know, with how many, honestly, 10-minute long songs we have, it's definitely a welcome change. It's a nice track, 7 out of 10, A tier. And lastly, making friends with My Arm, Troll Shuffle. The song starts sort of sad, but it's overall very fun. It's more on the side of exciting adventure and the roadblocks you face in it than anything else. Honestly, again, after so many tense songs, these are a welcome change of pace. I actually find these tracks to be the most simple Ash tracks that he has ever created. That isn't a negative, by the way, just pointing that out. As for this track, 7 out of 10 A tier. Next up, Alchemical Attack, and we have reached Cabo's Lowlands. Many big updates this tier list, I say. To a certain point it sounds like a jungly song, and it also doesn't sound like a boss track. Like, it sounds like some quest song in the jungle. Like, yet again, Ian doesn't really have that bombastic oomph that, you know, you need when it comes to tracks like this. So it sounds more like there's a fight in the middle of the jungle, but not necessarily that this is a high-stakes boss fight. I guess sure the tension is there, but again, it sounds so much like jungle tracks. Overall, the track just kinda leaves a lot to be desired, especially with the epic tracks we have had so far. But I do guess the track itself isn't all that bad. I'll give it a 6 out of 10 B tier. Next up we have Burning Desire. We are back to long Ian tracks, and I don't get why. Like at the theater chambers, I get the long tracks. This isn't that though. As for the song, heavy militaristic style while sounding menacing and hostile. I guess it's fine, but I've heard so much stuff from Ian and from other composers that I just can't be arsed with Ian anymore. Like, its stuff mostly sounds the same to me. Yeah, sure, he did have a lot of bangers at the start, and sometimes he can put out some bangers, but overall his stuff is just kinda boring to me, and, you know, for every banger he has 10 boring tracks. 5 out of 10 B tier. Next up we have Creeping Vines. These might be me, but holy hell is this track loud, like very very fucking loud. Aside from that, it's a 7-minute long song made by Surma for Ispori. You know, I mean, the intro of the song doesn't make you uneasy, and you know, while the song is amazing at creating an atmosphere, we are talking about the Ispori cave. Like, this is a tiny place, and most people will be here for, like, a minute tops. Which, by the way, and since I have the foresight here, because I've heard the boss track already, we are talking about another 7-minute long track. So, the Aspori place, both the cave, which is this track, and the boss, which is a track we're gonna talk about later, is 14 minutes worth of audio. That's a bit excessive, even by Jagex standards. But yes, outside of that, I mean, the song sounds amazing, honestly. But like previous things, it's more of a atmosphere thing than a song. You can't help but feel that, you know, something isn't right. There's a certain tension that permeates everything. It's pretty good, it's a solid 8 out of 10 A tier. Next up we have A Farmer's Grind. I know that Surma fares well when it comes to epic boss battles. I mean, that's what he's mostly known for, and that's what he has mostly done so far. But what about farming? Well, surprisingly good. It's a fun, chill song right here. Honestly, this song gets me excited to do some farming. Farming. The skill where you sit there and just wait real life hours, by the way, for stuff to grow. Honestly, the entire song is a vibe. I'm about to go put on some just farmer's outfit and just plant some crops, cause that's where this, that's what this song deserves, honestly. The interesting thing about it is that even though clearly it has a more modern composition, it somewhat reminds me of old school tracks. You know, some parts, in my opinion, don't fit as well as others, but overall it's a fucking bop. And at this point, why not? 9 out of 10 is tier. Next up we have The Forsaken Tower. The intro sounds like the introduction sequence of a boss in Final Fantasy. This ominous, menacing intro with the organ. It sort of maintains that throughout most of the song, I guess. Then again, you know, it's mostly just to maintain atmosphere. I mean, I gotta say, I have criticized songs in the past for being, you know, full songs in places that were tiny, that, you know, you would spend a few seconds on. At least now Jagex, instead of, you know, making full songs for these places, they mostly just make atmospheric songs, which I think goes much better with a lot of these locations. Not all of them are bangers, but they do a much better job than just having a discombobulated song sort of just float around and confuse you why it's there. As for the song, 6 out of 10 B tier. Next up we have Full to the Brim. This song is hard to describe, much like Ian's songs lately. Anyway, the song sort of has this heavier side to it, because of brimstone and whatnot. Also funny that they made a pun with the title, especially considering that Full is the elder god released or related to lava and creating the mountains and stuff like that, which makes the pun even better because it involves brim, you know, like brimstone. Anyway, it's a fine song, a bit on the jungle side again sometimes, but you know, it just sort of exists in this lull of heavy, ready to fight, but never quite getting there. If anything, it just speaks to an hostile place, I guess. 5 out of 10, B tier. Next up we have Jill Bill. For all the shit I give Ian, he is good at these types of songs, the more relaxing, fun type of songs. Just, you know, laid back, lazy afternoon, not much going on. This is my opinion what made the classics great. It's this sort of spirit of just getting home and relaxing after a hard day at school, where the game will just give you the space to just exist and go on adventures, or just sit there and get some trees and like humbleness. I think that this song and the original songs just gave you that humble vibe of a world that wasn't that serious but was still there for you. That's what this song reminds me of. And as for the song itself, solid 8 out of 10 A tier. Next up we got Getting Down to Business, another fun track by Surma. This one plays outside of the farming guild, so not as high octane, I guess, but I love these types of tracks. These are the moments where the game doesn't take itself too seriously and just enjoys being there and give you some fun without any strings attached. There's a certain simplicity to the fun that these tracks provide. Not as great as the farming ones, but Surma reminds me a lot of Bond actually. At least when it comes to these tracks, they tend to be much more stripped down and just rely on the instruments changing things up individually one by one, which makes it easier for you to feel invested in the song. Solid 8 out of 10 A tier. And we are down to the final stretch, the last 10 songs. First up we have Grow, Grow, Grow. This is what I tell my plants when I need them for a quest. Shame it wasn't a Bond song, to be honest, since the naming scheme actually means it's one of his songs usually, but it's actually Surma's. Much like the previous track, this is a fun farming track. I'm not gonna repeat myself since the vibe is the same, but it's a solid 8 out of 10 A tier. Next up we got Hold Down. I legit don't know why Ian's song just sounds less aggressive. Like, this is the third and last track that plays at the farming guild, and it just doesn't have the same oomph that Surma's songs have. Like, it's hard to explain, but yeah, overall, again, the same vibe, same fun song about farming. Not much to say that I haven't said previously, since all the songs do play in the same spot, because the farming guild apparently needed 3 different songs plus Diaspora songs. So yeah, 8 out of 10 A tier. Next up we have Canon of Calith. Same vibe as Full to the Brim, albeit a bit better, I guess. I vibed more with this one than, that one. This one has a more somber tone to it, seems more focused and cohesive. It also feels far more repetitive. 5 out of 10 B tier. Next up we got Newbie Farming. What a fun, happy song about farming. It has the same vibe as the other Surma farming songs, so again, I'm not gonna get into it too much because this is already pretty long, but yeah, it's this exciting, fun vibe really gets me going. Another solid 8 out of 10 A tier. Next up, On the Front Line. Surma is that meme like, you just need a song for this part, nothing major, and then Surma just comes up with like this epic fucking song for no reason. Like, I get it, we're talking about a battlefield, but this makes me feel like, I'm locked in a 1v1 against the fucking raid boss, no way out until one of us dies, right? Like, this is a bit too epic for the chaos that is the battlefield. I like the song, like this sense of epicness to it, the menacing tone, no place is safe. Yeah, I guess there is a reason why Surma tends to make most of the boss fight songs. I guess that is his strong suit. I feel like I'm gonna be, sort of attacked by this huge, epic enemy, when I'm listening to this song. I think this type of song would very easily fall under the generic category, yet here just sounds like an overall solid track. I do feel that it's missing a bit more of chaos, or I guess even triumph to it. Like, it's missing that something, I would say. But still, and look, I said that it wasn't appropriate in the place that it plays, but I'm kind of being generous today, so 9 out of 10 S tier. Next up, Servants of Strife. A very somber, sad song, very ominous. It has this slow tempo just setting the mood of a desolate place, forgotten by people left to rot. That's the vibe I get anyway. This song was made by Mod Ed. At this point we have had 5 composers that made music exclusively to Old School Runescape, and in total the game has had like 9 composers with all of the songs they have used from RuneScape 2. Sure, Jed only made 1 song, but I mean, it's a song nonetheless. This song is mostly just atmospheric, and yeah, it seems we are in this, the section of just atmospheric songs at the moment. Again, I'm not really complaining, it's something different from everything we had up until now. This tier list specifically, this 500 to 600 song list, has really brought a lot of different stuff, and I'm here for it. As far as this song goes, 7 out of 10 A tier. Next up we have Stuck in the Mire. This song has a similar vibe to the previous one, somber and ominous with that dash of desolate crumbling place. And yet, it has sort of this more humble section. Maybe that, again, that's why maybe Ian's songs worked so well at the beginning, but why they don't work now. They tend to have these sections that sound more uplifting, which at the beginning, when it comes to, I guess, I'm gonna call it the humble genre, there it works, but here, it really doesn't. It just makes the vibe more confusing than it actually needs to be overall. Makes the different sections not gel as well with each other. It's a 5 out of 10 B tier. Next up we have A Thorn on My Side, or In My Side. I actually don't know if it's on or in. I wrote in my script that it's in, I wrote here that it's on. It's probably in, but again, just like the other thing, I'm not gonna fucking change it. Let's be honest. If I didn't show you where this song actually plays, would you guess it plays during a sporing? This is what I mean with the description of the song on the front line. We are fighting a plant that we grew and came alive. It's not that big of a deal, okay, yeah, it's cool, whatever, fight, whatever, fantasy scenario. But it's not that big of a deal. And yes, Surma just goes all in as if this was the most important high-stakes boss fight of your entire account. I would have loved to hear what Surma would have done for both Dragon Slayer 2, and Monkey Madness 2, and just those epic quests. It's just this tense, epic song all the time, and it's 7 minutes long of just, this war drum beating, leaving you hyped for the fight. And now I wanna log in and fucking just fight a spore. I don't have any planned, but I will probably plant one and just fight it, because I really feel like Gillenor depends on me to stop this threat. Contrary to Ian, Surma's song just to have that oomph that really just leaves you hyped to get into the fight. I don't want to put another fucking track like this in S tier, so very, very solid 8 out of 10 A tier. Next up we have A Walk in the Woods. Less than 2 minutes of a song, very relaxing, chill song. It plays in the current woodland, so it gives you more of that peaceful vibe. A little bit of a break before, all the high-octane action, I guess. Just a little, vibe to replenish our energy. This song was actually made by Ian, and again, even a broken clock is right twice a day, I guess, as people say. And again, as I've mentioned, for every track that Ian makes that is kind of boring, there's that one that is a banger. 9 out of 10 S tier. Next up we have A Way of the Worm. It's the third song that plays in the Karum dungeon, made by Ian, same tense, fighty type vibe, although this one is a bit more on the side of mystery, adventure even, but yeah, it's still, tense fight vibe. 6 out of 10 B tier because Ian had to do it again. And lastly, we have Box of the Lights. This song actually has the same vibe as Coil. It was also made by Ash, and it's less than 3 minutes long. It feels tense while, also a sort of twisted playfulness to it. It's a nice track, but it very much does feel like a downgraded version of Coil. And then it goes into this sort of grandiose, high-tension moment. Everything becomes so much more serious in this moment, but then the song diffuses itself again and goes back to what it was before. In terms of layout, this is what Ian usually does, so, you know, if it weren't for the typical Ash sound, this could actually pass as an Ian song somewhat. Either way, the song itself, 6 out of 10 B tier. And that concludes this tier list, and after this we have one more tier list to get all the RuneScape songs down. Honestly, when I started this tier list, I had way more S tier tracks than I thought I was going to, or I had way more S tier tracks than I actually ended up having. I guess the beginning was very strong with all of the S tiers and then sort of like slow down towards the end. Again, the theater songs, they didn't impress me as much, but I guess if Surma had been more experienced with the Old School Runescape sound font at this point, I think that a lot of the theater songs would actually be S tier, and honestly in the future I might actually put them there. I don't know. I have to honestly go on a review spree someday to actually review a lot of these songs, especially the 8 out of 10s that are in the A tier, because, you know, a weak 7 out of 10 is definitely not on the same level as a strong 8 out of 10, you know, but overall pretty good. Again, like, it does seem that the audio in Old School RuneScape is getting better, and again, like, I've mentioned this in the videos and I'll keep mentioning this because ultimately a lot of my ratings aren't exactly very objective. They're mostly just based on vibes. Did I like the song or did I not like the song? That's pretty much the criteria of my songs and the way I rate them. But it does feel that at this point, like, I have heard 300 songs straight that were just Ian, if not 400, because I think that the first Bond track was like 496, I think, something along those lines. No, actually 396 it might have been, right? So it's like I heard almost 400 straight songs of just Ian, you know, and this style. So when I get here, a lot of these songs might actually be boosted in terms of ratings, right? Like, as in, maybe I wouldn't have rated them as higher, but at this point I'm so tired of Ian songs that any song that isn't Ian to me just catches my attention, much like originally the Ian songs did. So yeah, maybe they're a bit boosted in terms of rating, but yeah, that's pretty much it. And again, as always, I'm gonna leave the link in the description for you to be able to do this, as I always make this available for you to do every single tier list. I would have loved to actually made one with like 1,000 songs, but unfortunately Tier Maker only allows 100 items or 500 or something like that per list, so, you know, I decided to break it up in 100 segments. And yeah, you can go down, you can save your own preset and whatnot, and yeah, that's pretty much it. I'll see you in the last part 7 of this entire ordeal, and honestly, I can't wait for it.